Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other socials for more. Enjoy. Spencer leaned back in his leather chair, a satisfied smile playing on his lips. He gazed out the window at the skyline of the city he and Mary had conquered together, one property at a time. Their small company had grown into a real estate empire. And now, after years of hard work, they were ready to cash out. "Honey, the lawyers just called." Mary's voice drifted in from the doorway. "The paperwork's all set. We're officially selling." Spencer swiveled in his chair, his eyes meeting those of his wife and business partner. "Can you believe it? We did it, Mary. We really did it." Mary crossed the room, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. She perched on the edge of his desk, her hand finding his. "I always knew we would, Spence. From that very first fixer-upper we bought together." He chuckled, remembering the dilapidated house they'd poured their savings into fresh out of college. What a mess that place was. But look at us now. "To new beginnings," Mary said, raising an imaginary glass. Spencer mirrored her gesture. To new beginnings. As the weeks passed and the dust of the sale settled, Spencer found himself adrift in the sudden quiet of retirement. The constant hum of phone calls and meetings had been replaced by the ticking of the grandfather clock in their living room. He should have been relishing the freedom, but instead a creeping unease began to take hold. It started with a twinge in his back, a dull ache that refused to subside. He caught himself slouching more, his once straight posture giving way to a slight hunch. Mary noticed, too, her brow furrowing with concern as she watched him struggle to get out of his favorite armchair. "Spence, maybe you should see Dr. Thompson," she suggested one evening as he winced, rubbing his lower back. "This isn't like you." Spencer waved her off. "It's nothing, honey. Probably just need to get back to the gym, that's all." But as the days turned into weeks, the discomfort only grew. His gait became slower, more deliberate, as if each step required careful consideration. The man who once bounded upstairs 2 at a time now gripped the railing, his movements hesitant and unsure. Finally, after a particularly rough night of tossing and turning, Spencer relented. "All right, you win," he told Mary over breakfast. "I'll make an appointment with Thompson." The doctor's office was a sterile contrast to the warm, wood-paneled rooms of their home. Spencer sat on the exam table, the paper crinkling beneath him as Dr. Thompson reviewed his chart. "How long have you been experiencing these symptoms, Spencer?" the doctor asked, peering over his glasses. Spencer shrugged, wincing slightly at the movement. "A couple months, I guess. Ever since we sold the business." Dr. Thompson nodded, making a note. "And the pain, it's mainly in your back?" "Yeah, but it's not just that. I feel off, like my body's not quite mine anymore." The doctor's pen paused mid-scribble. He looked up, his expression thoughtful. "I'd like to run some tests, Spencer. Blood work, hormone panels, the works. It could be nothing, but I want to cover all our bases." Spencer nodded, a flicker of worry igniting in his chest. As he left the office with a stack of lab orders, he couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. The next few weeks were a blur of needle pricks and waiting rooms. Spencer found himself poked and prodded, scanned and examined. Through it all, Mary was a constant presence, her hand steady in his as they navigated the maze of medical jargon and uncertain diagnoses. When the results finally came in, Dr. Thompson's furrowed brow did little to ease their concerns. "Spencer, Mary," he began, gesturing for them to take a seat. "I've gone over your tests, and while there's no clear-cut diagnosis, there are some unusual findings." Spencer leaned forward, his fingers intertwined with Mary's. "What kind of findings?" The doctor cleared his throat. "Your hormone levels, particularly your estrogen, are significantly lower than what we'd expect to see in a man your age. This could be contributing to your muscle weakness, bone density issues, and overall sense of fatigue." Mary squeezed Spencer's hand. "So what does that mean? Is there a treatment?" Dr. Thompson nodded slowly. There are options, but before we discuss those, I'd like to refer you to a specialist, a therapist who has experience in these matters. They might be able to provide some insights that I can't. As they left the office, Spencer felt as if he were walking in a fog. The crisp air did little to clear his head as they made their way to the car. A therapist? He muttered, more to himself than to Mary. What's a shrink going to do for my bones? Mary slid into the driver's seat, her expression a mix of concern and determination. Let's just see what they have to say, Spence. We've always tackled things together, remember? This is no different. He nodded, trying to summon a smile for her sake. But as they drove home in silence, Spencer couldn't shake the feeling that they were embarking on a journey far more complex than any property deal they'd ever negotiated. The therapist's office was nothing like Spencer had imagined. Instead of the leather couch and dim lighting he'd expected, Dr. Evelyn Chen's space was bright and airy, with plants dotting every available surface. The woman herself was equally unexpected, young, with a shock of purple hair and an easy smile that immediately put Spencer at ease. So, Spencer, Dr. Chen began, settling into a comfortable-looking armchair across from him. Tell me a bit about what brings you here today. Spencer shifted in his seat, suddenly aware of how his body felt in the space. Well, it's a long story, I guess. My wife and I, we just sold our business. Should have been the happiest time of our lives, you know. But then he trailed off, gesturing vaguely at himself. Dr. Chen nodded encouragingly. Then things started to change, he continued. My body, it doesn't feel right anymore. The doctors can't figure it out, but they said my hormones are all out of whack. Dr. Chen leaned forward, her expression thoughtful. And how does that make you feel, Spencer? This change in your body? The question caught him off guard. He'd been so focused on the physical symptoms that he hadn't really considered the emotional impact. I don't know. Frustrated, I guess. Scared, maybe. Like I'm losing control. Those are all very valid feelings, Dr. Chen assured him. What we're experiencing physically often has deep connections to our emotional and psychological state. Have you ever felt disconnected from your body before? Spencer opened his mouth to deny it, but something stopped him. A memory surfaced, hazy and distant. You know, when I was a kid, I used to have these dreams. I was someone else. A girl, I think. It never bothered me. It just felt right. Dr. Chen's eyebrows raised slightly, but her voice remained neutral. That's interesting, Spencer. Dreams can often be a window into our subconscious. Have you ever explored those feelings in your waking life? He shook his head, a nervous chuckle escaping his lips. No, I mean, I'm happily married to a woman. I've never... That's not me. Of course, Dr. Chen said softly. I'm not suggesting anything, Spencer. I'm just trying to understand your experiences. Sometimes our bodies have ways of communicating things our minds aren't ready to acknowledge. The session continued, with Dr. Chen gently probing into Spencer's past, his relationships, his sense of self. By the time the hour was up, Spencer's head was spinning with new questions and possibilities he'd never considered before. As he left the office, he found Mary waiting for him in the lobby, a magazine open on her lap. She looked up, her eyes searching his face. How'd it go, honey? Spencer ran a hand through his hair, struggling to find the words. It was different, not what I expected. She wants me to come back next week. Mary stood, linking her arm through his as they walked to the car. That's good, right? Did she have any insights about your condition? He hesitated, unsure how to explain the direction the session had taken. Not exactly. It was more about feelings, I guess. How I see myself. Mary's brow furrowed slightly, but she nodded. Well, if it helps, that's what matters. We'll figure this out together, Spence. Whatever it is. As they drove home, Spencer found himself stealing glances at his reflection in the side mirror. For the first time in months, he really looked at himself. The lines around his eyes, the set of his jaw, the slope of his shoulders. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was seeing himself through new eyes, as if a veil had been lifted. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of appointments and discussions. Spencer continued his sessions with Dr. Chen, each one peeling back another layer of his psyche. Meanwhile, Dr. Thompson worked to balance his hormones, experimenting with different treatments to alleviate his physical symptoms. It was during one of these follow-up appointments that Dr. Thompson broached a subject that would change everything. "Spencer," he began, his tone careful, "I've been consulting with some colleagues about your case, and we've come across an unconventional treatment option that might help." Spencer leaned forward, hope flickering in his chest. "I'm all ears, Doc. At this point, I'll try anything." Dr. Thompson nodded, pulling out a file. "There have been some promising studies showing that in cases like yours, where traditional hormone therapies aren't effective, introducing estrogen into the system can have remarkable benefits." The room seemed to tilt slightly as Spencer processed the doctor's words. "Estrogen, but that's a female hormone? Yes, doctor," Thompson finished for him. "I know it sounds unusual, but the results have been quite impressive. Improved bone density, better muscle tone, increased energy levels. Of course, there would be other changes as well." Spencer's mind raced, images flashing before his eyes, a body so different from the one he'd known for decades. He should have been repulsed, should have laughed off the suggestion. Instead, he felt a strange sense of calm settle over him. "What kind of changes?" he heard himself ask, his voice sounding distant to his own ears. Dr. Thompson's expression softened. "It would be a gradual process, but over time you'd likely see changes in your body fat distribution, skin texture, even your emotional responses. Essentially, Spencer, you'd be undergoing a form of gender transition." The word hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Spencer's thoughts drifted to his sessions with Dr. Chen, to the dreams he'd buried long ago, to the persistent feeling of disconnect he'd been battling for months. I need to think about this," he managed to say. "Talk to Mary." Dr. Thompson nodded understandingly. "Of course, this isn't a decision to be made lightly. Take your time. Discuss it with your wife and Dr. Chen. We're here to support you, whatever you decide." The drive home was silent, Spencer's mind a tumult of conflicting emotions. How could he even begin to explain this to Mary? Would she understand? Would she still love him if he couldn't bring himself to finish the thought. As they pulled into the driveway of their home, Spencer took a deep breath. "Mary," he began, his voice shaky. "We need to talk." The kitchen had always been their place for important conversations. It was where they'd planned their first property purchase, where they'd celebrated their biggest deals, where they'd comforted each other through losses and setbacks. Now, as Spencer stood at the counter, his hands wrapped around a mug of cooling tea, it felt like the most important conversation of their lives was about to unfold. Mary sat at the island, her own mug untouched in front of her. Her eyes never left Spencer's face as he recounted Dr. Thompson's suggestion, his voice growing steadier as he spoke. When he finished, the silence stretched between them, thick with unasked questions. Finally, Mary spoke, her voice soft but steady. "How do you feel about it, Spence?" The question caught him off guard. He'd been so focused on how she might react that he hadn't fully processed his own feelings. I don't know, he admitted. Part of me thinks it's crazy. I mean, I'm a man. I've always been a man. But another part... He trailed off, struggling to find the words. Mary reached across the counter, taking his hand in hers. "Another part of you is curious?" she prompted gently. Spencer nodded, a weight lifting from his chest at her understanding tone. "Yeah, and not just curious. It's like something's clicking into place. Does that make any sense?" Mary squeezed his hand. "It does. Honey, I've watched you struggle these past few months. I've seen how disconnected you've felt. If this could help you feel whole again, how could I not support that?" Tears pricked at Spencer's eyes. But what about us? Our marriage? I don't want to lose you, Mary." She stood then, coming around the island to wrap her arms around him. "Spencer, I didn't marry you for your body or your gender. I married you for your heart, your mind, your soul. Those things aren't going to change no matter what your outside looks like." As Spencer melted into her embrace, he felt a surge of love and gratitude so strong it nearly overwhelmed him. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. The decision to begin hormone therapy wasn't made lightly. Spencer spent countless hours in discussion with Dr. Chen, exploring the depths of his identity and the implications of transition. Mary was there every step of the way, asking questions, offering support, and sometimes just listening as Spencer worked through his fears and doubts. When the day finally came for Spencer to take his first dose of estrogen, the moment felt both monumental and oddly anticlimactic. It was just a small pill, after all. But as he swallowed it down, Spencer felt as if he were stepping off a cliff into the unknown. The changes were subtle at first, a softening here, a rounding there. Spencer found himself studying his reflection with a mixture of fascination and trepidation, cataloging each minute shift in his appearance. "Your skin looks amazing," Mary commented one morning as they got ready for the day. "It's like you're glowing." Spencer ran a hand over his cheek, marveling at the smoothness. "It feels different. Everything feels different." As the weeks turned to months, the changes became more pronounced. Spencer's body began to redistribute its fat, softening his angular features and creating gentle curves where once there had been hard lines. His hair grew thicker, softer, and he found himself experimenting with different styles, delighting in the way it framed his face. But it wasn't just the physical changes that took Spencer by surprise. His emotional landscape shifted too, becoming richer, more nuanced. He found himself tearing up at sappy commercials, laughing more freely, feeling everything more intensely. "It's like I'm experiencing the world in high definition," he told Dr. Chen during one of their sessions. "Is this what it's always like for women?" Dr. Chen smiled. "Everyone's experience is unique, Spencer, but many people who transition do report feeling more in touch with their emotions. How does it feel for you?" Spencer considered the question. Overwhelming sometimes, but also, right, like I'm finally tuned into the right frequency. As his body changed, so too did his wardrobe. What started as a practical need for clothes that fit his new shape evolved into a journey of self-expression. Mary became his enthusiastic shopping companion, helping him navigate the bewildering world of women's fashion. "What do you think of this?" Spencer asked, emerging from a dressing room in a flowing sundress, the fabric soft against his skin. Mary's eyes lit up. "You look beautiful, honey. That color really brings out your eyes." Spencer turned to the mirror, taking in his reflection. The person staring back at him was both familiar and startlingly new. He smoothed his hands over the dress, marveling at how natural it felt. "I like it," he said softly, a smile spreading across his face. "I really like it." As Spencer grew more comfortable in his evolving body, he and Mary began to discuss the next steps. Legal name change, updating documents, coming out to friends and family. Each decision felt monumental. "What about work?" Mary asked one evening as they sat on their back porch, watching the sunset. "Do you want to go back?" Spencer shook his head. "No, I don't think so. At least not to real estate. This feels like a fresh start in every way. Maybe it's time to explore something new." Mary nodded, taking a sip of her wine. "You know, you've always had an eye for design. Remember how you used to stage all our properties? You lit up every time you got to decorate a new place." A spark of excitement ignited in Spencer's chest. "You think I could do that? Interior design?" "I think you can do anything you set your mind to," Mary said, leaning over to kiss his cheek. "You've already proved that." As the months passed, Spencer, who now went by Sophia, flourished. She threw herself into studying interior design, her natural talent amplified by her newfound sense of self. Their home became her laboratory, each room a canvas for her evolving style. "What do you think of this color palette for the living room?" Sophia asked, spreading out fabric swatches and paint chips on the coffee table. Mary leaned in, her eyes scanning the selections. "I love it. The way you've balanced the warm and cool tones is brilliant." Sophia beamed, her heart swelling with pride and love. "I couldn't do any of this without you. You know, your support, your love, it means everything." Mary reached out, tucking a strand of Sophia's now shoulder-length hair behind her ear. "You're the bravest person I know, Sophia. Watching you become who you truly are. It's been the greatest privilege of my life." As they leaned in to share a kiss, Sophia marveled at how far they'd come. From business partners to life partners, through changes neither of them could have imagined, their love had only grown stronger. The journey wasn't always easy. There were awkward moments, misunderstandings, and the occasional flash of dysphoria that left Sophia reeling. But through it all, Mary was her rock, her cheerleader, her safe harbor. 1 year to the day after starting hormone therapy, Sophia stood in front of their full-length bedroom mirror, really taking in her reflection. The person looking back at her was undeniably feminine, eyes bright with a happiness she'd never known was possible. "Happy anniversary," Mary said, coming up behind her and wrapping her arms around Sophia's waist. Sophia leaned back into the embrace, her eyes meeting Mary's in the mirror. "Can you believe it's been a year? Sometimes I feel like I've been this way forever. Other times it feels like yesterday we were in that doctor's office, terrified of what the future might hold," Mary finished for her. Sophia nodded, turning in Mary's arms to face her. "Thank you," she said softly. "For everything. For loving me through all of this. For seeing me even when I couldn't see myself." Mary's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "Loving you is the easiest thing in the world, Sophia. You're still you, just happier, more vibrant, more alive. How could I not fall in love with you all over again?" As they held each other, Sophia felt a sense of peace settle over her. The road ahead still held challenges. There would be more changes, more adjustments, more explanations to give. But here, in this moment, with the love of her life by her side, Sophia knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The next morning, as sunlight streamed through their bedroom window, Sophia awoke with a sense of purpose. Today was the day she'd been both anticipating and dreading, the day she'd reveal her true self to their closest friends. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Mary asked as they prepared breakfast together, their movements in the kitchen a well-choreographed dance. Sophia nodded, whisking eggs with determination. "As ready as I'll ever be. They're our friends, Mary. They deserve to know." The hours ticked by slowly as they prepared for the small gathering. Sophia fussed over every detail, from the appetizers to the flower arrangements, channeling her nervous energy into creating the perfect ambiance. As the doorbell rang, announcing the arrival of their first guests, Sophia felt her heart rate spike. Mary squeezed her hand reassuringly. "You've got this, love. I'm right here with you." The living room filled with the warm chatter of their closest friends, none of whom had seen Sophia since her transition began. She hung back in the kitchen, taking deep breaths to calm her nerves. Finally, with a nod from Mary, Sophia stepped into the room. The conversation died away as all eyes turned to her. For a moment, silence reigned. Then their old friend Tom broke into a wide grin. Well, looks like someone's been holding out on us. You look fantastic." The tension in the room dissolved as their friends surged forward, enveloping Sophia in hugs and exclamations of support. Tears flowed freely as Sophia shared her journey, answering questions with candor and grace. "I just can't believe how happy you look," their friend Rachel said, clasping Sophia's hands in hers. "It's like you're glowing from the inside out." As the evening wore on, filled with laughter, tears, and heartfelt conversations, Sophia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. These people who had known her for so long still saw her, the real her, beyond the physical changes. Later, as they bid goodbye to the last of their guests, Mary pulled Sophia close. "I'm so proud of you," she murmured against Sophia's hair. "You were amazing tonight." Sophia relaxed into the embrace, feeling truly seen and accepted. "We were amazing," she corrected. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." As they closed the door on the night's revelations, Sophia felt a surge of excitement for what the future held. With Mary by her side and a supportive network of friends behind her, she was ready to embrace whatever came next. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity as Sophia threw herself into her new passion for interior design. She enrolled in online courses, pored over design magazines, and transformed their home into a living portfolio of her evolving style. One sunny afternoon, as Sophia was knee-deep in fabric swatches and color charts, the doorbell rang. Mary answered it, returning moments later with a puzzled expression. "Sophia, honey? There's someone here to see you. A potential client, I think?" Sophia looked up, surprised. She hadn't officially started her business yet, still feeling her way through the industry. "A client? Are you sure?" Mary nodded, gesturing towards the foyer. "She says she saw our living room when she was here for the party and wants to talk to you about redecorating her place." Heart racing with a mixture of excitement and nerves, Sophia smoothed down her skirt and made her way to greet the unexpected visitor. There, standing in their entryway, was Rachel, beaming from ear to ear. "Surprise!" Rachel exclaimed, pulling Sophia into a warm hug. "I hope you don't mind me dropping by like this, but I couldn't stop thinking about how amazing your house looks now. I was hoping you might be willing to work some of that magic on my place." Sophia felt a rush of emotion gratitude for her friend's support, pride in her work, and a thrill of anticipation at the prospect of her first real project. "I'd be honored, Rachel. Why don't you come in and we can talk about what you have in mind?" As they settled in the living room, Sophia's designer's eye already cataloging possibilities for Rachel's space, she caught Mary's proud smile from across the room. This, Sophia realized, was more than just a potential job. It was the beginning of a new chapter, a chance to build a career around her authentic self. The weeks that followed were a frenzy of activity as Sophia dove headfirst into her first professional design project. Rachel's trust in her abilities gave her the confidence boost she needed, and soon word began to spread among their social circle about the talented new designer in town. As Sophia's business grew, so too did her comfort in her new identity. She navigated the world with increasing ease, her interactions with others becoming more natural and relaxed. The occasional double-take or misgendering still stung, but they were becoming rarer as she settled into her true self. One evening, as Sophia and Mary were enjoying a quiet dinner at home, Mary broached a subject they'd both been dancing around. "Sophia," she began, her tone careful, "I've been thinking. Have you given any thought to surgical options?" Sophia set down her fork, meeting Mary's gaze. They'd discussed the possibility of gender confirmation surgery before, but always in abstract terms. Now, with Sophia's transition progressing so well, the question felt more immediate. "I have," Sophia admitted. "Quite a lot, actually. I think I'm ready to take that step." Mary reached across the table, taking Sophia's hand in hers. "You know I'll support you no matter what, but are you sure? It's a big decision." Sophia nodded, feeling a sense of calm certainty. "I'm sure. This journey has shown me who I truly am, Mary. And while I know my identity isn't dependent on my body, I want everything to align, to feel wholly myself, inside and out." Tears glistened in Mary's eyes as she squeezed Sophia's hand. "Then let's do it. We'll research the best surgeons, take all the time you need to prepare. Whatever you need, I'm here." As they embraced, Sophia felt a wave of love and gratitude wash over her. This next step would be challenging, But with Mary by her side, she knew she could face anything. The months leading up to Sophia's surgery were a blur of consultations, preparations, and emotional highs and lows. Through it all, Mary was her constant, her anchor in the storm of change. On the morning of the surgery, as they sat in the pre-op room, Sophia felt a moment of panic. "Mary?" she whispered, her voice tight with fear. What if I'm making a mistake?" Mary took Sophia's face in her hands, her gaze steady and loving. "Sophia, listen to me. You're the bravest, most authentic person I know. This isn't a mistake. It's the final step in becoming who you've always been meant to be, and no matter what, I'll be right here when you wake up." As the anesthesia began to take effect, Sophia held on to those words, letting them carry her into unconsciousness. The recovery was long and often uncomfortable, but with each passing day, Sophia felt more and more at home in her body. Mary was there through every moment, changing bandages, offering comfort, and celebrating each small victory. Finally, 6 weeks after the surgery, Sophia stood naked before the mirror, really taking in her new form for the first time. Tears welled in her eyes as she traced the curves and lines of her body, a body that finally truly felt like hers. "What do you think?" Mary asked softly, coming to stand behind her. Sophia turned, pulling Mary into a tight embrace. I think I'm finally me, completely wholly me." Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my other socials if you want more wonderful content, early access, behind the scenes, and more. All links down below.